Okay.
Good.
Start it now. This top one, where stop checking, so we just have to share with all the people. This is the letter that someone walking has up to, and the one is just from that, from the same choice, right? Thank you. Yeah, okay. So, how we will pass that. Yeah, the letters from Melissa is the one that I can share, sorry. Please make it very clear. So why I chose this week for, the small town, everybody knows everybody. There's no big city culture, minds pushing different agendas that we aren't looking to live in. It's a place where my children do not be forgotten in the school system. There's child-centered learning, and I was so worried about here even being pushed until I read out, but and on our teachers. So impacts that math is making on my child along with others. My son knows this is normal. And you can tell by the way he looks and acts when he has to go to school with math. He's told me on several occasions how terrible these maths make him feel. They make him feel bad about the fact. He would tell me they did not have as many math grades as the parents were recently by the school district. With math in school, he's become more self-conscious of being accepted socially because he's not getting the reactions from his friends, peers, or his teachers when he's communicating with them. No child should be delayed in learning math being mandated for them. The math is looking at their cognitive skills because they are unable to see the formations of words taught by their teachers in the classroom and to properly form the afterwards because they can't even see someone making formation of the word. If math has to be an option, then I would totally understand it being on the bus, walking in hallways, from the classroom, to the bathroom. But there's no need to have it in the classroom. Last year they were social distancing 6 feet apart. I mean, there was no reason for them to wear masks. This should apply on all district grounds. You can maintain that 6 feet apart. I hope there can be a compromise and not the dictatorship of the board here today. You were voted in by the Waynesburg residents, not the CC or New York State. The board is supposed to make the right decision for our children. No one said being a board member was going to be easy, and no one expected you to find a violent organization to never play a role in the best interest of our school district. So I feel you need to use your skills for the best of the kids, since there is no true grade of transition for children. Let the parents make the choice of whether or not their child should wear a mask to school. Kara? Yes. Sure.
My name is Kara Tanase. I live here in Atlanta. I have one child in 9th grade and who just graduated, writing this expressing mask. I recently wrote a letter on August 10th and forwarded it to you all expressing my concern for the students of the school district having to wear masks from the time they step on the bus at morning pickup until they step off the bus at drop off. Ultimately, the response I received was, "We will be following the recommendations of the science experts or health experts." Experts, I am assuming you use that term very loosely or perhaps to intimidate parents or attempt to instill fear in us. If not, I expect you to have some real facts to back up your comment that they are experts. Experts who were inconsistent throughout the pandemic still are today narratives to remain safe during the pandemic. Definition of expert: a person who has comprehensive and authoritative knowledge or a skill in a particular area. I ask you, are you still an expert in the field if you keep changing your mind weekly? Surely you think not. The DOH and CDC have changed their minds about policies concerning COVID just about as much as they have the numbers of the effectiveness of COVID. If you already force masks, you take responsibility for those who will get ill from carrying around bacteria in their face all day. If you pass out masks to students multiple times a day so they won't be wearing the same dirty mask? Before you answer that, where exactly is your expert data to back up that masks cause no harm and make children safer? What children's studies have been done to justify wearing a mask for over 8 hours a day is burden and health and creates no harm to wherever those around them? I will answer that for you. There is none. I researched this a lot. Not one comprehensive safety study has been done in the United States for children wearing masks. So passing wearing masks. People under age 25 have 1 in 1 million chance of dying from COVID. Wearing a mask can increase anxiety and see that it might further. They are a breeding ground for bacteria. Wearing a mask keeps a level of fear instilled in our youth. Weakens their immune system, creates emotional trauma. It's obviously uncomfortable for them. It clogs their glasses, which they constantly, and I see it all the time, it happens to me, constantly play with my mask. Get around this, pretty gross. And it's even a second. If you read all of your so-called experts' information on mask wearing, everything mentioned is may help stop the spread of COVID, may prevent droplet transfer, which further proves the false protection masks create. I am entrusted by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, to make the right medical decisions for my children, not the CDC, not the DOH, not the government, nor the school board. When I am in doubt, I pray on it, I pray for the correct answers during this pandemic. In doing so, it has made it clear to me that this has become a medical tyranny. By enforcing masks on the children, it's unethical, lacks sound scientific basis, and it's dangerous. I encourage you to listen to what us parents have to say for our children. I urge you to choose medical freedom for everyone and allow mask wearing optional. Our children need to see faces, smiles, see lips move, read facial expressions, and not have conversations muffled by a mask. Please help eliminate our children from living in fear and allow us parents to decide what to do medically for our children. We do not co-parent with DOH or the CDC. Their lack of consistency is proof they are not experts. While you continue to protect yourselves politically, our children suffer. My child will come in and safety like that.
Okay, I just thought you were wrapping up, so I don't mind. Thank you. Isabel?
I actually don't have anything particularly to say, but I support the mask being optional.
Crystal?
Hi. I'm Crystal. My son is going into 3rd grade. I am a registered nurse. I worked through the pandemic in an emergency department. I worked with COVID-19 patients. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of the masking for the kids. I am also in favor of the optional masking. I don't know if any of you have seen a 3rd grader come over with their mask, but it is completely soaked. And if I've learned anything in my years as a nurse, when we're taught to wash our hands, we're taught to do it for over 20 seconds, dry our hands thoroughly, grab a new paper towel that is completely dry, and then turn off everything. When our paper towels are wet, that is allowing bacteria to go through the wetness of that paper towel back onto your hands. Same thing with our masks. When they get wet, you're allowing that bacteria to not only sit in the mask material, you're allowing it to go into your children. They put it on your face and breathe it in. I agree with another parent that said that your minds are made up on this. But if there is the opportunity to have optional masking, that when they're sitting at their desk and they are taking mask breaks, I know my son was able to do a couple of mask breaks a day with his teacher in 2nd grade, and she was phenomenal. They're already breathing their germs in their designated areas. And if they're allowing the kids to have the masks off during their school day, then they can put them back on when they have to go into the common areas, out into the hallway, wherever. But mask up, it's dry. But when they put it back on, they're not breathing in the bacteria. Another thing is I wanted to commend your staff that are cleaning the schools, because it worked for them. I know my son comes home 5 to 6 times in the cold flu season with some sort of respiratory illness and isn't asthmatic. So as you know, we being a nurse, I'm pretty on high alert with anything respiratory related. And I am in favor of all of those things because he came home maybe once. And then the other times he came home, it was mandatory because the whole class had to quarantine. So again, they need to have a big path for that and to please continue to enforce the cleaning that they have already done and the hand washing, because they were really enforcing the hand washing with the kids.
Abby?
So I've got a couple of different examples, from what I've seen and heard for the first of last year when my daughter Avery was in second grade. I asked her multiple times, did you get a mask break throughout the day? She said, no, the only time I needed to wear a mask was when we were eating and taking a drink. And I said, are you sure? Because I'm eating sometimes. She is adamant that she was not getting sufficient breaks, which is not the case. She's also absolutely mortified during the end of the year when they were able to go without it outside. I would tell her, if you can walk to the building without it, you get to the building, pull it up. And I said, you're going to see other kids that are going to still wear it outside, and that's okay. That's their choice. I said, we don't judge those kids. We don't look at them everyone. And she completely understands that. For the end of the year, with, again, the regulations, kind of lightning with being outside and not having to wear one, and still socially distant. We had field day. There was oodles and oodles of pictures that were sent home with these kids standing side by side, holding hands, playing, as I believe it should, with no mask. But then going back inside, separated at their desks, and still having to wear a mask while they're trying to learn. On the bus, my daughter goes to the sitter's house, has a daughter in her grade in the same district. They go to school in my vehicle together. They ride the bus home to the sitter's house together, but they're not allowed to sit in the same seat on the school bus together, which makes absolutely no sense. I'm sure all of you really riding the school bus, the only enjoyable part of that is being able to talk with your friends, which these kids need. They need the socialization back in their lives. Their anxiety has gone through the roof. I had to talk to teacher about it. He said, we are both months out with these children that need their lives. That's not okay. I'm going to resort to the quote you have on your slide. All of the instruction that can't be provided when the teachers are spending the entire class telling kids to take the mask out of your mouth, pull the mask up, do this with the mask, do that with the mask. I will go back to what she said. Thank God for the janitorial staff and whoever else, teachers included, keeping up with the hand washing. To me, that's what got us through. It's not the mask, they're not doing anything. Kids can stand outside, be panting in each other's face from running around because it should be doing. And then go inside and sit 6 feet spaced apart, and think that we're in a district that's small enough that we can do that, then it should be optional. Again, people in Title 7 and understand. Some people are going to feel more comfortable with it. Others are comfortable not. It should be a parent's choice.
I respect you, Deb, on the path. I got nothing to say.
Nicole?
Okay, I'll read this on her.
So I would first like to state that this is my first time in 21 years I've ever been in BOE Meeting. I have 21 year old graduates this year. That is how important this is to me as a parent. The main reason for me here today is the mask, obviously. Last year, my son, who will be 9th grade this year, didn't come multiple times, but he still passed. When I asked him what happened, he said, just came out of nowhere. I asked him, why he didn't say anything, and why he said he wasn't there, he didn't want to be helped. He also wasn't sure what to do, or who to talk to regarding the center. So all day, we're letting those masks multiple times. My son also had asthma and was fully aware of this, and he has always had an inhaler at school. I feel that it is in our children's best interest to have a say and a choice as adults do. Follow the facts, follow the science. My son doesn't want to come back to school because of it. He wants to be able to breathe. Most children have an excellent immune system. And for the ones that do not, their parents should do what is best for their child and take precautions. Now, I'm 41, my daughters who are 1 and 21, my son's 2 sons who are 14 and 23, and my 21-year-old boyfriend who's 19 already had COVID. After a vacation this summer, it was not fun. We all had different symptoms, and we barely took any medicine. We are alive. And our immune system did its job, which it should. We shouldn't have masks on. My fiance, 42, has the COVID-19 shots. He has vaccines. And didn't get it. He was with all of us in the same house, same room, and bedroom, with no mask worn. Neither did his 63-year-old mother who came to our house mask. I am not for the vaccine until I see further long-term results, and my entire family does not wear a mask anywhere. Unless we are forced to. Even after having COVID, we still get outside. Masks on a bus, walking to the class, and going to the lockers is harmless. That's fine. But all day with a grade to breathe, not an 8th grade to breathe or 1 grade, breathing is why we are alive, it's part of life. If students are sitting at their desks 6 feet apart from other students, they should be able to remove their masks the whole time while seated until they get up. These children hang outside, out of school with no masks. Families have whole places with no masks. I would love to know how the school's going to prevent the spread. You're not. You're not going to prevent it. You're just neglecting our children and mentally scarring them and possibly causing long-term health issues. Thank you.
Just got any questions on this last guys? You guys have heard that change in filtration system for filters that required by law? Now, while I understand,
We don't converse with the public during this time, so now's your time to get comment.
oh, that's fine. How do I find that information out?
You can send a request in if you want, and then we'll work toward, we can ask for that to be investigated and get back.
It does seem like everyone's minds made up, but I do want to remind everyone that these are elected positions. And come election time, even if we have it locked down, it just takes more time and more money and more information to keep those spots. And more people are going to get together, and more people are going to make it out of charge.
And a lot of people don't want to stand up and come in there. I didn't do my filter.
No, everybody has one-on-one.
Oh,
So we're good.
I'm sorry.
Did you have more?
Question. I don't know if it's not good answer.
We can document the question.
I don't know. It's just a simple question. Am I going to have to put in a request to find out what the requirements are to become a superintendent position or any district assistant, however it works? I know a lot of districts have residential requirements. You have to live in the district to become a superintendent.
Submit that question for.
Thank you.
Covered the list. We're taking out public comment. And moving on to the superintendent status report update. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight and for going to our agenda. I appreciate you advocating on behalf of your children. There's nothing more important as a mother of 5 children. I understand that. So thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your thoughts and expressing.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about my proposed protocols for dealing with COVID-19 as we start this year. I'm going to walk through a little bit about what we know right now about our community. So what we know is that the Delta variant and other variants are more contagious than previous strains. of COVID and they cause more infections. We also know that people, even vaccinated people, can have breakthrough infections that can spread the virus to others. We know this about our county. So our county right now, Summit State website. So this was results from yesterday. So as of yesterday, we had 6.1% positivity rate in Schenectady County. There's also in the last week. This is from the state website. This is from the CDC's website. In the last week, there's a 56% growth, 56% change in positive cases in Schenectady. Right now, Schenectady County is classified by the CDC as a county that has high transmission. Okay, so they have 4 different ratings. They have low, moderate, substantial, and high. We did spend most of the summer in the moderate and low range, and we're in high. We do know that the county has a really strong vaccination rate. So we know that about 65% of the people who are eligible to be vaccinated in Schenectady County are vaccinated. We know that 70% of people have at least 1 dose. So we have a really strong vaccination rate in the county. We do know that we have an incoming governor who has made some comments, and I just put the comments up there because I think that they're telling, they could possibly be telling. And she said that she does think that there will be mask mandates at some point, and her priority is to make sure that kids come back to school safely. So we also know what the CDC has recommended. So these recommendations basically stem from the CDC, from also the American Association of Pediatricians. The New York State Department of Health has largely punted this question back to the CDC's recommendations. And so that's really what we're basing our decisions on. So what the CDC has said is that vaccination is really the leading public health prevention to end this pandemic. What they've also said is that because of the highly contagious Delta variant and other variants like it, they're recommending universal indoor masking by all students to and up. And that includes students, staff, teachers, and anybody who comes into the school environment, regardless of vaccination status. And so a couple of weeks ago, when these recommendations came out, we made a decision at the school to make sure that the folks in the school building were vaccinated and going without masks. We're putting masks back. So the CDC also recommends 3 feet of physical distance between students within classroom environments. So really what they're recommending is 3 feet and a mask. When it's not possible to maintain 3 feet of distance, they have given schools leeway to not maintain these distances if it means the difference between reopening schools and not reopening schools. Because they also agree, like you do, that it's very important to have schools open. They also advocate for something that's called a multi-layered or tiered approach to prevention, which includes screening testing. So screening testing, ventilation, hand washing, respiratory etiquette, covering your mouth when you sneeze and cough, staying home when you're sick, getting tested and staying home until you're cleared. All of these things, in addition to quarantine and isolation, and cleaning and disinfection, all of those things are some of the layers that we put in place to slow the spread of COVID-19. So one thing that they also recommend, which is very important, is that students and staff and teachers should all stay home if they have any sign of any infectious illness. And they should go to their healthcare provider. Testing now is thankfully much easier than it was in the past, whereas it was difficult in the beginning to even find a place to obtain a test. Now it's as easy as going through like a CPS drive-through. There are tests available everywhere. We've also been given permission by the county to use rapid testing cards for various other purposes. And we do have some of those rapid cards available. And so they also say that localities should monitor community transmission, vaccination coverage, screening testing, and outbreaks to guide decisions about layered prevention strategies. So not just using transmission as the sole determinant for what we decide to do, but using all of these things to make these decisions. So the bottom line recommendation from the CDC is that transmission can only be limited with these layered mitigation strategies, which include universal and direct use of masks and physical distancing. So that's their bottom line recommendation. So when you talk to people in public health, which unfortunately I've had to do a lot of over the last year, more than I ever thought that I would have to do, they use this metaphor a lot, this metaphor of Swiss cheese, stacking Swiss cheese, as a way to describe how they do this layered approach. And so you do things like that are all imperfect on their own. We know that physical distancing is somewhat imperfect because people move around, you can't get them to stay put. No matter how much we want people to stay put, they just don't. Masks are another imperfect thing. Not touching your face is something. Making sure that our ventilation is up to date, our air filtration systems work, and also using things like quarantine isolation. In addition to vaccines, all those things together, once you stack them up, those holes are reduced greatly or limited. And so that is really what they're advocating for when they talk about layered mitigation approaches. And so what we've done is we've tried to determine what the layers would be in our school, depending on the different transmission levels in the community. We know we have a high vaccination rate, but we know that we're at high right now, and so we need to stop that in its tracks. And so the first thing, and probably most controversial thing, is of course face masking indoors. And so what we're recommending is that we follow the CDC, especially in times of substantial and high transmission. So right now we're at high transmission. We appear to still be climbing. Substantial is also quite high. And so what we recommend in that case is for everyone, regardless of vaccination status, to wear masks while indoors. However, when things start to get better, when we get back down to moderate, we can start kind of taking away some of the universal masking precautions that we have until the point when we're at low, which is pretty near zero transmission rates. At that point, we would be encouraging face masking in the buildings, but not necessarily requiring face masking for people indoors. Social distancing is actually going to look quite a bit different this year than last year. So last year, if you recall, we really tried our hardest to make sure that there were 6 feet of distance between all students, which caused a lot of problems. So in the elementary school, what it did was it basically created these overflow classrooms that were staffed by aides, and teachers rotated between 3 rooms and really were in charge of whole grade levels instead of just one classroom. So students didn't have the contact time with that teacher that we know that they benefit from. In the high school, what we had was we had situations where we were actually streaming classes to other classrooms in the district, and we also had people streaming to home as well. So what the CDC has recommended this year, that 3-foot distance, what it really does is it allows us to go back to classrooms that are sort of in their normal capacity. So except for a couple of cases in the district, 3-foot distance is sort of what we had the year prior to that anyway. And so what we're really going for this year is 3 feet of distancing when practical, and when it's not, just making sure that students are wearing masks. So the CDC has required that schools all wear masks on buses. So we're going to wear masks on buses until they change that requirement. And we also, we're also going to use seating charts on buses to make sure that students stay in the same spot. And the reason why we're going to do that is because we're going to try to limit the amount of havoc that quarantine plays on our students. So what we've been told by the county is that as long as students are masked and we know where they are, we can be more surgical quarantine. Instead of taking out the entire bus or the entire classroom, we can look at the people who were directly next to that person or anyone who wasn't masked when that situation was happening. So those masks on buses and in classrooms are really going to help us, hopefully, to avoid a lot of those quarantines, which really became the biggest issue that we had last year. It wasn't so much the rate of infection that we had, but it was the quarantine that really caused a lot of difficulty with keeping classes going. And any time that we had to actually go to remote learning, we did so because we just had too many staff members quarantined that we couldn't operate in person. So in high and substantial, we're also going to, as the CPC recommends, encourage parents to transport their own students. We have enough room on our buses to transport everybody, so parents don't have to do this if they can't do it. But if parents can transport students, it would help decrease the density of buses. We will not be requiring students to sit one per seat. There is no distance requirement on buses any longer. There's only the capacity requirement. So for outdoor activities, including recess, there really are no restrictions regarding masking during outdoor activities. Masks are recommended in substantial and high rates of transmission, but not required, and also optional during outdoor activities for low and moderate. For mealtime presents another difficulty for us because kids are taking masks off. What the CDC is suggesting is that when people are taking masks off, the distance should really be increased to 6 feet from 3 feet. So in most cases, we can do that. However, it becomes really difficult scheduling wise to to have 6 feet of distance when we have the entire high school eating lunch in the same room. So what we're going to do is maximize the amount of distance. In most cases, it'll be 6 feet. In the elementary school, they're going to use the cafeteria, but they're also going to rotate. So sometimes they eat in the cafeteria, and sometimes they eat in the classrooms. But we're going to try to use those public spaces, again, those cafeteria spaces. We're going to maximize our space. We're going to keep seating charts for the ease of contact tracing while at lunch. Kids will be able to eat with their friends, but for, say, a few weeks, they might have to eat with the same group of friends so that we can keep that seating chart a little bit more constant. And we'll just try to do our best with physical distancing during those meal times when the masks are off. For performing arts, that was another obstacle last year, was that performing arts were difficult because of the spread of aerosolized stuff when you're playing wind instruments and singing. And so we did start playing instruments and singing last year with masks on. And really what's required now is 3 feet of distancing and masks for singers, and for wind instrument players, the 3 feet of distancing, and they're recommending the bell covers for wind instruments. Not actually requiring there's a special kind of mask that musicians can also wear. They're actually not recommending those masks. They don't think that they're necessary, so they're requiring them. So we will be going forward with all of our extracurricular activities this year, and that includes the school play. And so when we do stuff like the musical in the elementary school and the high school, masks are going to be required for unvaccinated singers and actors, but we're going to do blocking that allows some distancing between people, and hopefully we can have our full complement of everything that kids need and like to do. For physical education, still requiring masks for high and substantial, and then when we get down to moderate, again, just unvaccinated folks wearing masks in moderate, and then if we get down to low, going to mask optional. We won't be using locker rooms again. Locker rooms are just very difficult to monitor. Oftentimes coaches, you might have a male coach and a female team. That coach can't go in the locker room and monitor, and so we'll either use the locker rooms as another restroom, so that just at a time we're going in there, or the locker rooms will be closed altogether. So for athletics, we do plan on having athletics, and so what we'd like to do is, we'd like to continue to invite spectators to athletic events. However, in high and substantial transmission rate times, we're going to limit the spectators to just 2 per athlete. We did that last year, and it worked out pretty well. We'll continue streaming events for people who can't come, but that should be a small enough group so that it's easy to monitor and contact trace in case somebody does end up being positive at an event. We'll also be making folks, when they go to indoor events, sign in just so that we can contact them in case something happens later on. And we are also recommending masks for outdoor athletics, but not requiring them. And then for indoor athletics, we will be requiring masks, which we did last year. And even for sports like wrestling, which is the one that I have the biggest fear of, the masking didn't really present issues for wrestlers. And so we'll continue to be wearing masks while doing indoor sports. So we'll still be doing spectators, still trying to do spectators indoors, trying to do distancing indoors. And this is about 3 feet between families, but we should have plenty of room to do that. So surveillance testing is going to look a little different last year. Last year we did have, we had surveillance testing that was an opt-in by parent consent with the binary swabs. And so what those are the kind of not super probate swabs, but the kind of just the edge of the nostril swabs in a card. We still have some of those. We may use those to begin with, but the county has also contracted with a group that will allow them to do saliva pool testing, which is a lot less invasive, really can be done by the students themselves. They can swab the inside of their cheek and they just put it in a tube and all those tubes get sent off to the lab and the whole pool is negative, then it's fine, but if one of them pops, they'll individually test all of those tubes. We will also be requiring consent for people who want to participate in surveillance testing. That consent form is going to come out a little later. The county's actually managing that process. So it's going to be an online login for consent situation. I'm not sure what the opt-in rate will be. It'll be enough to have an impact, but that's what they'll be doing. In terms of school visitors, we will be limiting visitors during times of high and substantial transmission to no unnecessary visitors, which we really shouldn't have. Anyway, there shouldn't be unnecessary visitors in this anyway. But no unnecessary visitors and limited outside groups for using the school facilities. And when I say limited outside groups, that doesn't mean that groups who've used the facilities in the past responsibly and can't follow the protocols that we have set up to still be able to use the facility. I was just talking to youth basketball earlier today about the importance of that program and whatnot. We talked about what the protocols might look like. They think that they can follow the protocols. I would love to be able to offer that to kids because they think that they really need out. So we'll be limiting it to groups that can comply with the protocols that we have in place. All the other things are things that don't really change depending on the level of transmission. We're always going to be encouraging people to get vaccinated. It's the best way that we have to eliminate this pandemic. We're always going to be encouraging people to wash hands, taking time at the beginning of the year to teach kids how to wash their hands properly, making sure that when we come to the playground, we're washing our hands. Like I said, that really did cut down on a lot of other illnesses this last year. So we didn't see things like stomach bugs and other respiratory illnesses because we're doing a much better job of washing our hands. And with our respiratory etiquette, we'll still have hand sanitizer places for people to use. We will no longer be using the daily attestation forms, which I think became more of a nuisance than a help as the year went on. That was a requirement from the state, and then when the state DOH guidance lapsed, that's something that we no longer have to do. And so we're not going to do the daily attestations unless there is a reason to down the road. We're still going to encourage people to stay home when they're sick. I think that's just a good idea anyway. And for too long, people have been coming to school and work and they're sick. We are encouraging people to make sure that they don't put other people at risk by coming to school and getting others sick. We're still going to be doing our cleaning and disinfection. We do daily cleaning of all of our areas. We make sure that our ventilation, air quality is good, that our windows are open when they can be, that we have doors open when they can be, that we're using mechanical ventilation systems that we found to their maximum effect. And so we'll continue to do those things, because those also keep people healthy. So some other notes, I sent an email out to parents a couple of weeks ago talking about remote. So we will not be allowing people to opt into remote learning as we did in the past. We won't be streaming all classes. The only reason we might stream a class is if we have people who are quarantined in their class, or say the teacher is quarantined. But there won't be just a remote option for people to be home. Just get the streaming version of that class. Overall, that's a pretty effective way to do instruction. There's not a lot of teachers can do while they're teaching in person for folks that are at home. So it's just very difficult. So instead of that, we're going to use BOCES is developing a regional service where they will have teachers who are remote-only teachers who will teach classes at every grade level and all the required high school and middle school courses, and they'll be teaching those. But we're only making that available to those who are medically in need of having remote instruction, who themselves have medical conditions that don't allow them to come back into school, or people who have family members at home, maybe have compromised immune systems. So those are the only remote learning option available to. We have asked, and we asked people to contact parents, contact principals to tell them if they had one of these medical exemptions, and actually ask the nurse to call all the folks who were remotely instructed last year, have medical conditions, to ask them if this is something that they're going to exercise. Right now, very little interest in that option. There's a couple of kids that might avail themselves of that, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be widely used option. We're still going to continue to provide one-to-one devices. That was something that parents said overwhelmingly in the feedback form that I sent out about how we should use federal stimulus funds to continue that program, which I think is a great idea. We won't be using virtual classrooms in the elementary schools anymore. Instead, students will be in the regular classroom with their teacher. We'll again be using libraries, cafeterias, common spaces, and we'll again be offering our full complement of extracurricular activities, faculty buses. And so basically what we have is a situation where things are pretty much like normal, except with masks being high and substantial transmissionary times. Most of the other stuff is more or less business as usual with a few modifications. But that's where we're at right now. So that's my proposal for how we handle the year going forward. Of course, I mean, there's always things that can change. So we don't know what's going to happen with the transition. We know that it very rapidly went from low to high. We don't know if it'll happen in the reverse. We don't know if there'll be a state mandate that makes this stuff pretty much useless. Right? It could very well be that the incoming governor imposes a mandate and our plans go out the window and then there's universal masking all the time. So we don't know what those plans are, but these are the best plans that we can come up with now. I'll also say that the reason for these plans is really in the best interest of kids doing things that we feel are right for the health and safety of everybody's kids. Nobody wants kids to be sick, and certainly no one wants anyone's kid to, be put at risk of hospitalization or death because of something that we could control with medications.
ratification and approval of the prior Board of Education meeting minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the July 6, 2021 reorg and regular board meetings and the July 27, 2021 special board meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second. Thank you, Melissa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Did you say the July 6th and 27th?
Yes.
Okay, I abstain. 7th. That was good.
We just note that for us. In terms of standing committee reports, I know that we're in a reorg situation with our committees. I did hear back from some board members on preference if you have not sent me an email of your preference, if you could do so in the next couple of days, and then I'll keep that back out and report that for next time. I don't think there's any updates on any of them as since our last one.
No, other than to say that, don't forget that the plans for the bus renovation are still in their plans. 23rd of September, it'll be in the elementary school. And there'll be some postcards that they going out that will explain some of the projects. Also, maybe some signs that should look like, hopefully the other signs should look bright in that parking lot so they can compare it to the parking lot that as it exists now. But that's the.
Moving on to the financial portion of the agenda, accept claims auditors reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the claims auditors comments on general warrant 825 in the amount of $267,511.65 and general warrant A1 in the amount of $228,452.16 dated June 30th, 2021. General warrant A2 in the amount of $194,354.36 dated July 15th, 2021. General warrant A5 in the amount of $468,357.92 dated July 29th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Tony. Diane, second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item, disposal of obsolete transportation vehicles. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve surplus of the amount of the following obsolete transportation vehicles and authorizes the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services to determine the best interest of the district, either to trade in or auction. And the 3 buses as listed on the agenda. Do I have a motion? Jane, second. Francis? Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve BOCES contracts. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the final AS7 2020 to 2021 BOCES contract and preliminary AS7 2021 to 2022 contract as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Diane, do I have a second? Melissa, thank you. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve Whispering Pines preschool contract. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program Agreement between Whispering Pines Preschool and Waynesburg Central School District for the 2021-2022 school year as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services and the Superintendent. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Diane. Second. Thank you, Teresa. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve CASBA Agreement. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Waynesburg Central School District hereby approves the agreement dated August 4th, 2021 by and between Waynesburg and CASBA for CASBA to provide consultant services to the Waynesburg Central School District and authorizes the superintendent to execute the contract and authorizes the payment contained therein. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Diane. Second. Thank you, Shane. Any comments or questions?
I'll just do,
We don't take questions during the board.
I'll just it has the contracts, CASBA and school districts, and this contract is for the stuff that we actually like for children. Several years ago. This person's done this for a bunch of different districts. They make some really good decisions.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve the MOA between the district and DESA. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the memorandum of agreement by and between the district and the Duanesburg Education Support Association regarding the Juneteenth holiday. The agreement shall not be binding until authorized by signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second? Thank you, Francis. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve use of facilities agreement with Mohonasen Central School District. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the use of facilities agreement with Mohonasen Central School District for use of their swimming pool facility for the Duanesburg Girls Varsity Swim Team. This agreement is for the 2021-2022 school year. The agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Shane. A second? Thank you, Tony. Any comments or questions?
So look at the second amendment, the only difference being now.
Yes, there was a fee involved, it was like a separate group. That was,
Full usage fee.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the other difference. Oh, thank you.
Any other questions?
I would just say that we just add on
Is that similar to what we're paying for water?
it's actually much less.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept financial reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, budget transfer, revenue status, and treasurer's reports ending June 30th, 2021, as provided by the treasurer and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Diane, a second? Sure. Melissa, thank you. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approved transfer of excess funds to reserve fund. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education authorize transfers from fund balance into the following reserve funds as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Capital Reserve Fund, $1 million. TRS Reserve Fund, $103,110. Benefits Reserve Fund, $6,814. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second? Thank you, Shane. Any comments or questions?
Just, this was a recommendation from our auditor, as we had some excess funds.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approved construction manager for capital project. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education hereby approves Schoolhouse Construction Services LLC to act as the construction manager for the district's upcoming capital project, subject to and contingent upon entering into agreement setting forth the terms of such services, and authorizes the superintendent to negotiate an agreement subject to board approval. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second? Thank you, Diane. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to other. Approved CSE and CPS minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE, CPS meetings and their minutes from the May 12th, July 9th, August 4th, and 9th, 2021 meetings. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Tony. A second? Thank you, Francis. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve emergency evacuation shelter. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Dwaynesburg Central School District hereby approves the agreement for the 2021-2022 school year by and between the district and Whispering Pines Preschool for sharing of facilities in the event of an emergency. Do I have an motion? Thank you, Shane, a second. Thank you, Diane. Any comments or questions?
So we also include transporting students from this very point in the event that they have a situation that requires them to have to leave. We also make them on the So.
Francis, did that answer your question? Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approved tax warrant. Recommendation that the Dwaynesburg Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 tax warrant in the amount of $8,385,866 as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Tentative tax rates as per 1,000 of assessed value. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Do I have a second? Thank you, Melissa. Any comments or questions?
I have the tax warrant here that we need to sign.
Okay. Thank you. And that's all board members, correct? Any comments or questions from the board? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution authorizing school reopening procedures and protocols. Recommendation that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to implement the school reopening procedures and protocols plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Tony. Do I have a second? Thank you, Shane. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Personnel. Accept resignation, A. Piercy. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Ashlyn Piercy, junior senior high art teacher, girls modified soccer coach, and junior senior extended art advisor, effective August 31st, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second. Thank you, Melissa. Questions or comments?
Yeah, so she's moving along.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept resignation for retirement, M. Mitchell. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation for retirement of Mary Mitchell, bus driver, effective August 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion? Francis, a second? Diane, gotcha. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept resignation, Y. Keller Baker. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Yvonne Keller Baker, junior senior high library media specialist and masterminds advisor, effective September 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second. Thank you, Diane. Any comments or questions?
I would also just like to comment that you know, we missed.
In section 9 of the page, setting up a library, start with your, or
She has to provide my contract in by 30 days.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointment, M. Adelia. Thank you. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Michelle Adelian to a 3-year probationary appointment as elementary reading teacher in the remedial reading tenure area, Master Step 12, commencing September 1st, 2021, and ending August 31st, 2024, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of education law. Ms. Adelian holds permanent certification as a reading teacher. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second. Thank you, Shane. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve reassignments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following reassignments as recommended by the Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent of Management Services effective August 18, 2021, as listed. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Diane. A second? Oh, I think Frank's second on that. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the Superintendent, Athletic Director, Assistant Superintendent of Management Services, and Transportation Director. ECA appointments are for the applicable 2021-2022 school year and sports season, beginning with preseason practice and ending at the conclusion of the season, including sectional play. All appointments are employees at will. An appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school season term year. The salary of the ECA club's activities and athletic positions will be prorated based on the length of the season term year. The operation of certain clubs and activities are subject to COVID-19 related restrictions, and as listed. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Shane, a second. Thank you, Melissa. Any comments or questions?
You said I hope. So all seasons are right now scheduled to go start on time during the season that they're supposed to be played in. And we really hope that they are played out.
All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, with that, we will close the meeting, adjourning at 7:49. Do I have a motion? Diane, second. Shane, any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good evening. That's the number 16. Yeah.
Especially those two.
Don't forget, we have the tax warrant paper. I'll pass it down for everybody.